Cool. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Really excited to talk to you all today. Before we start, I'll, introduce myself and then I'll let Rodney introduce himself. Sorry, let me make sure I get So my name's Rodanu. I recently joined open sponsorship from the team partnership side, previously with Gotham FC and the NWSL. My football background or soccer background, I played at University of Virginia. So me and Rodney have a little rivalry. I know he's a Maryland guy. And then played professionally in abroad in Europe in the Women's Champions League, and then over in the NWSL for a little bit. It was really fun to live out my dream, and now excited to be on the other side of the business. And I know Rodney's also kind of been making his way there as well. So Rodney, why don't you introduce yourself?
Well, Tina, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. And I'm looking forward to learning actually a lot about how to capitalize within the World Cup as well, and to provide some of my personal information and my personal experiences to all of you. So I'm Rodney Wallace. I am a former professional soccer player for 11 years. I went to University of Maryland, as Tina mentioned, won a national championship there, ACC championship, and then I went on to get drafted by DC United. Then I went to Portland Timbers, won a MLS Cup there. Was able to go to the 2018 World Cup with Costa Rica. And there's just been a lot in between, but now I'm now retired and into a completely different side of the game. And so I'm here to provide all the knowledge that I've gained from this side of things now to all of you.
You had to flex that national title, yeah?
It was light.
I lost my national title my sophomore year, but
I
like the flex championships. I appreciate that. So just to give you guys an overview of how we're gonna run through this today. So we'll talk a little bit. I'm sure many of you are aware of what makes the World Cup so special, but there's some kind of nuanced things about this year that make it unique. So we'll run through that. Kind of how we see brands currently activating and are currently activating leading in. Why, I, and I'm sure Rodney himself, believe influencer marketing is a really strategic strategy going into, now 50 days up until the first match, which is really exciting. And then some creative ideas as to how, I myself, and I'm sure Rodney will have thoughts on how we think your brands can get involved and get creative and what's going to be an exciting time around the sport for the next 60 to 90 days. So just to give you guys perspective, obviously it's the largest world sporting event, the World Cup. 3 billion plus engage with this every 4 years, representing their country and their pride for their country. So from a visibility standpoint, doesn't get much greater in terms of a world sport and an engagement standpoint. This is the first time ever, which is really unique, that the World Cup falls in the winter. I'm sure many of you are aware that it's every 4 years, but also typically as a summer sport. There's definitely some, for sure, disadvantages to that in terms of just being a bit of a saturated market in the US, but I also think there's great advantage in terms of leaning into a sport that's going to have a lot of growth and it's going to create a lot of chatter and engagement during a time when many of you are, in your premium selling season for, the holidays or Black Friday, and can kind of structure campaigns and marketing opportunities around that. The other component to this that's really unique is that because it's in Qatar, which is quite far, and probably from a restrictive standpoint, there's not going to be as many people on site to participate in this. There is a lot of expectation that this will be the most highly engaged, World Cup in terms of social media, also just seeing social media's growth, but the online interaction conversation that'll be happening around it as teams kind of battle it out and we get, in towards the tournament. And, living in the US, which is obviously a very diverse country, you're going to see many teams supported here and engaged with. So there'll be opportunities to kind of get behind a team and be a part of that, or target your audience to potentially a new audience group that you haven't before. And then for anyone who's not aware, in 2026, we have the US World Cup, which will span across Mexico and Canada as well. But in terms of where the majority of the games will lie, as well as the World Cup final will be in the US. So from a momentum standpoint, if you want to get on the bandwagon, it is right now. You don't want to be there out late to the party when everyone's trying to get a piece. I think this is the first opportunity in the US to really get involved in the sport. We're seeing high trajectory on the women's side of the sport and the men's side as well. I'm sure a lot of you saw the MLS's deal with Apple and other components that are coming into play. So the time is now. We're a little biased as former players, but the time is now to get, behind the sport. I think before I jump into kind of traditional marketing activations, Rodney, I'd love for you to talk a bit about, being that you were a player for 11 years and have kind of seen and firsthand seen as a player, and then now as a media member of just this exponential growth in the US. Can you talk about one, kind of the growth that you've seen in the sport as a player now, as an influencer in the media market, and also similar to like an Olympic athlete, why is the World Cup year kind of the peak year for an athlete in terms of their visibility and traction and marketability versus maybe a non-World Cup year?
Yes. So for me, it was social media and marketing and all of these beautiful things that are now available to us. Back in 2009, when I started my professional career, I believe it was Twitter. We had Facebook, but at the same time, brands and players weren't directly interacting. The way that I would get appearances or the way that I would interact with brands was through the team having an event, and then we would be the players that would represent that whatever sponsored event that was, whether it was a local brand, whether it was an international brand. So these are things that were brought on by the team. And as time went on, brands and athletes and players started to realize that there could be more direct connection and communication. And I would say by now 2013, that's when I started to personally see myself grow as a brand, aside from just a player. I believe that I was able to leverage myself more now that I was out there more. My career had taken off. I was on TV more. I was on the national team at Costa Rica by then. So that's when you become visible and you become attractive. So when I would play with the national team Costa Rica, local, let's say a bank would want to sponsor me, or they want to do an ad with me. And those are things that I continue to scale on. And then I would say by 2015, that's when we won the national championship, the MLS Cup at Portland. I'd say that's another point in my career when I was able to take advantage of that. So whether it was with my athletic sponsor at the time, whether it was with a community, a local charity organizing an event after winning, maybe presenting the trophy to a youth center, but sponsored by a brand. Fast forward to now where we have, everything is an ad. It has completely taken off, open sponsorship. The first time I actually linked up with open sponsorship, I believe, was with a mattress company, and they had an event in New York. And that's when I first got introduced to open sponsorship. I still didn't know what it was and how to properly use it, because it's such a huge advantage for athletes. It's right there in front of you, literally. Like, put your name out there and then just just wait and then see what you
I know,
attract
I'm
and what
jealous. I wish
matches.
I had gotten on the bandwagon earlier. I
Like,
would have made, would have
yeah,
made
yeah,
more money
yeah.
in my career.
I'm still
Um,
going with it. I'm still gonna. I mean,
yeah,
it's just starting. To be honest with you, this whole thing is it's ever evolving. It's
yeah.
just getting started. Um,
Well, I think that speaks to kind of the, marketability of the individual athlete. I mean, when you think about traditional marketing activations that are happening right now by the bigger players, those that are, having, maybe sponsorship or affiliation to FIFA specifically, this is a perfect example of that. It's like everyone and their mom would love Cristiano Ronaldo to kick, to touch their product or test their product or promote their product. But the hindrance here is that, KFC, as an example, probably paid 7 figures to have Ronaldo just appear on this ad or do a social media post. And I think
did Ronaldo even know that this happened? By the way,
I mean,
I don't even. It doesn't make. Because
I can't
I know
imagine Cristiano. Well, and to your point, I think that's where open sponsorship opens up a lot of doors in regards to finding a very authentic fit for you in regards to what your product is and how you're trying to affiliate with maybe a soccer specific star. I would make the bet that this didn't feel very authentic because we all know that Cristiano Ronaldo is the picture of health. So him eating a KFC product doesn't feel like necessarily something that we would see. But on this point, I think just to throw out some stats so people have a better understanding, from a linear standpoint, if you wanted to do a more traditional route of, putting up an advertisement or getting on television, transparently up until now, those slots are at zero. I mean, inventory is at zero. I looked up a couple of stats. I think this is of significance. Linear ad spend in the US for a 30-second slot for the 2018 World Cup was minimum 435,000. And so when you think about that number, just for one 30-second slot in linear television, when you think about how there's this greater connection that's built through athlete from just like how they exist in their community or fans ultimately, right, watching the sport or participating because they have an affinity for an athlete, that money can go so much farther from a campaign standpoint to just affiliate yourself with an individual athlete or group of athletes that are within the sport that are going to feel a bit more authentic and closely connected to whatever your product or shared value is and what you're trying to promote around it. And so to that point, I would love if you could just briefly talk about your experience as a footballer and like the fandom. I think people don't realize, especially on a global scale, like football audiences are incredibly strong. They're active buyers, they're active participants. They want to affiliate with brands that are ultimately supporting the game and sport that they love. And so from your experience, just even in the MLS, like how much love, even seeing it in the media, how strong do you feel the audience is that is participating? Even though, we are the 4th or 5th sport in the US in terms of traction, I feel like our population of audience is very, very strong versus maybe just like people who engage here and there.
Yeah, I think that every single city that has an MLS franchise now has, in a way, taking over whatever markets they're in, whether it's the original, the OG fan clubs, like the Portland Timbers, where you go to Portland, it's a small city. The only the only 2 sports at the time when I was there were the Trailblazers and the Portland Timbers. So I mean, walking down the street, it was, the fans recognized you, businesses recognized you. So that was a way else to get connected in a genuine, organic way. So if you, let's say, are a vegan and you enjoyed going to your favorite vegan restaurant in Portland, then they would know you, and then that's when you form an organic relationship. Then you can be a part of the advertising of the restaurant. But that was my experience then, and throughout the world now, it turns into a bigger market because now we have, for example, the NFT market. So now I can get involved with football punks, for example.
Yeah, there's
And
much more touch points and closer interaction, right? You can feel like you're almost friends or
exactly,
with your athlete. So I think just to highlight, I have an example I want to show after this. around a campaign that I think is really effective and kind of played off the audience of footballers, but also made it fun and kind of hilarious, frankly. But why influencer marketing is so strategic leading into this World Cup with the next 50 days is one, you have the opportunity to drive quick growth and scalable growth that's can be measured and valued. And that's the benefit of, the digital space, is that now you can, test campaigns and go do social campaigns via Instagram and see how people are interacting and iterate in real time, versus putting all this money into one ad and placing it into, an NDC slot and just saying, fingers crossed, hope it creates traction. There's a multi-channel approach. I think brands can get behind a single athlete or multiple where, you're utilizing social media. We'll talk through some event opportunities potentially that could be, pointed to your community and how to get involved. Scalability is no question. The World Cup is probably the most diverse and global audience you can get in sports. But you also can get really niche and targeted with it. To your point, you played, you're an American, you played on the Costa Rican national team. That may be a community that you're focused on as a brand. There's opportunities there to create an organic connection through you or through another athlete that is a bit more pointed to an audience that fits your values or fits your community initiatives or, your product, and do it in a way that feels meaningful with someone behind them. But I want to point out, we'll get into a couple different ways, but I think the first point I want to make around opportunity in the space, especially with influencers, around creativity. And so I think I'm going to show this example. This is, if you don't know who this is, it's Andrea Pirlo. He's the former captain of Italy. And this was an Uber Eats ad.
Respect him, please. Give him a proper entry.
He's a legend in the sport.
Maestro.
But this is a commercial I wanted to run that I thought was really innovative on Uber Eats part. They were not an official sponsor, so they kind of did a workaround here of not really affiliating to the World Cup or FIFA, but created a fun campaign around kind of the comedy of Italy not making it. So let's just quickly watch this.
So, Andrea, out of all the teams, who do you think's in with a chance of winning?
Maybe Brazil or France.
What about you? Italy. I mean, surely with you in the side, you've got a great chance. And how excited are you about playing Italy? I want to know how excited you are about playing out in Russia this summer and what chance you think Italy have in the business guy. Well, come. What do you mean? They haven't qualified. Andrea, come back. Is he coming back? Andrea, look, I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. But think about it. This is the first time that you can watch the FIFA World Cup as a fan in 16 years. The whole world's absolutely buzzing. It's a great excuse for a party. You can invite some of your old mates along and you can watch every game with McDelivery and Uber Eats.
Right there.
Yeah, get your TV on, mate, and enjoy your summer.
Let's do it.
That's what I'm talking about. Here's your food delivery.
Thank you.
Enjoy. Hey, Andrea, I hate to spoil your appetite, but don't you need a team to support?
Good point.
Surely you've got a favourite team. What about Australia? I mean, they've got great fans. I mean, Japan. Brazil. Mexico. England. I mean, we need all the help we can get. What about France? I know you've got history with them, but your support could help them win it this time.
Tough decision. I need some help.
So anyway, I thought this was a great play on, again, an advertisement, but something that could be brought to life via, any digital platform, whether it's Instagram or wherever you'd like to place it from a channel standpoint. But Pirlo, as an example, is not a current player, is a former legend. I think that's another major opportunity in soccer, is that, the relevancy of former players is just as prominent as it is for current players. Obviously, with us now having 50 days left, it'd be a bit difficult to build a campaign necessarily around someone who's actively training to be as part of the World Cup. But there's really creative ways where you can bring comedy in and play off of some of the storylines that are happening. Obviously, that Italy, in that World Cup had not made it, and it was the first time in 16 years. So there's a bunch of comedy around that. But I think this is just one example of how, you know, with social media and the ability to find an influencer that aligns with kind of your messaging and story, you can get really creative and fun, and approach it in a way that feels unique outside of just placing your ad or promoting your ad. You can kind of make it a bit more soccer centric while still promoting whatever your product is or your brand messaging.
Oh, Andrea.
Sorry, another interesting one. This is actually, and sorry, the picture's a bit blurry, but this is another really cool example of this year, actually. We talked about, I was actually talking to someone about this before, but I think we should also note, you know, take part in thinking about the competition component of what the World Cup offers. I mean, all of us come from diverse backgrounds and may not be US as our team, it may be a different team. Literally avocados, like the avocado distributors, are putting up a lot of these pop-ups in stores right now. These are two former captains, Landon Donovan, many of us know, and the former captain of Mexico. And I think another strategic way you can get involved is creating, creating an affiliation through an influencer, whether that's like them being part of the branding or them being part of the messaging. But then also you can kind of create it interactive. As you can see, there's QR codes as part of this. There's some components of buy two, get one free. There's interaction opportunities via digital. They have the Always Good campaign that's running via social to kind of create traction and conversation around this. So I think there's a multitude of ways to get involved that feels specific to your product, but also specific to soccer. You want it to feel authentic. You want it to feel like, you know, you're promoting something that's meaningful, but also kind of links back to the sport. And so in saying all this, Rodney, I would love, you know, I told you I was gonna put you on the spot of it here. I would love for you to kind of, as an influencer in the space, from a not only a former player standpoint, but as a, you know, active media voice that has a trusted audience that respects kind of your feelings on the sport, and the conversation that surrounds it. How would you pitch yourself right now as like an influencer in the space to get involved in the World Cup? What would you be passionate about doing, and how do you think you could help a brand kind of create this deep connection between the sport and their product?
First of all, me being an analyst for Fox and for FS1 and Fox Español, Fox Deportes, is using that platform as a way for brands to have a brand activation, so they can see me on TV and they can say, okay, well, we want him because of what he represents. He went to a World Cup in 2018. He's worked with major brands. Let's use him as somebody that is going to bring an audience to our watch party. That's an example. For me personally, now that I'm still using the 2018 World Cup as a way of marketing myself, because it is the biggest sporting event in the world. It is the #1 sport in the world. So when people see that, automatically they say, oh, okay, well, he's this credibility behind his story, this credibility. So we can definitely rely on him to know what to do with our brand within that moment. So now I am in the process of building a soccer house, and that's my version of it. That's my idea of it behind my career. So building something that I'm very passionate about is the way that I believe is how I can capitalize on myself and what I've done. So being part of something that I strongly believe, that I have responsibilities with, that I have liabilities with, and that I have the opportunity to be very successful with, I'm going to dive into that project. So right now, House of Soccer, we're looking, for example, for sponsors and brands that are willing to invest within the game, that are willing to invest within the community, and it has to align to the beliefs that I follow, and the beliefs that I think are best to represent my brand. So being able to connect, especially with the ones that I've already worked for. So before the World Cup, maybe a month before, my teammate and I at the time, Ronald Matarrita, we did an ad for, I believe it was Men's Health. And they just wanted to run through exercises that we would do, and we could advertise it to their followers, to the public, as this is what 2 World Cup athletes are doing to stay fit. This is what you can do. So basically, just being passionate about and organic about what you are putting out there. For me, it's always about giving. So that's why I'm giving back to the game. That's why I'm creating a place for kids to be able to play. So that's what I'm working on right now. And there's more to this, but I'll throw you another one. I'll throw you another one in a bit, but that's the latest. That's the latest.
Yeah. And I think to your point, 2 things I want to pull out of that. One is that there's a major growth opportunity with this sport in the US, not only because we have a major event coming, but we're just seeing that trajectory happening in and of itself, right? Like there's so much opportunity to get involved. There's so much opportunity to see the growth happening in real time. And like I said, it's always more exciting to get in early and create that emotional connection with these fans that are ultimately very vested in the ultimate growth of the sport in the US, bearing that it is the world leading sport in every other country in the world. And I also think the philanthropy component of what you're talking about is really meaningful. I think a really strategic way brands can get involved is like extending upon your community efforts. Depending on where you're located, there's really cool opportunities here where it could be as simple as taking someone like yourself and offering a watch party in your community, or locationally some of that is meaningful for your brand, and just connecting your brand to the opportunity for footballers to have a space to connect and be together. And who knows, maybe you're an alcohol brand, you can offer alcohol, or maybe, there's something that you can sell as part of that. But I think community and philanthropy always go a long way, because it creates this really, positive affiliation behind your brand that ultimately, wants people to not only participate in your events, but buy your product. And so with that, I think we'll just end on this component of the event activation. I think one other strategic way you can get involved that could be either layered to your digital marketing, approach, is utilizing athletes to kind of be influencers at a specific event, and center that event around, what we're doing with the World Cup. There's going to be hyper engagement. There's going to be people wanting to get involved and participate. Or that can even be done, as we talked about before this, Rodney, in a digital capacity. A lot of these games are going to function in the workday, which is why there's going to be a lot of conversation and interaction offline from the live experience. So be part of that conversation, create competitions, create narratives, offer fans opportunities to interact with you, and, maybe get a part behind a US opportunity and engage there. And but yeah, it's a really exciting time for football or soccer in the US. I think there's going to be, leading into the Women's World Cup next summer and the growth they've had with the national team there, and then ultimately the Men's World Cup in 2026. There's many ways that you can get involved, especially from a cost effective way through influencer marketing. And yeah, we're excited to keep promoting you, Rodney, and bringing your ideas to life, but also have a great Rolodex of athletes and open sponsorship that I think could create great traction for our brands here in the US, and seeing the growth there. And with that, I'd love to kind of open it up to Q&A. I know we have a question in the queue already that I think we should just answer now. Okay, this is from Chloe. Do we see a difference in using influencers versus talent? Over here in the UK, we segregate influencers as someone who have a large audience who can then influence, whereas talent covers a more specific category. What are your thoughts on using influencers who may be cheaper versus talent who come with the relevancy but higher price? I have thoughts. Do you have thoughts, Rodney? Would you want to kick that off, or I'm going to kick it off?
Personally, it's about what you can afford. And in my opinion, I'm an influencer, I'm an athlete. Brands try to do their best to find the medium, find a good opportunity with an athlete. At times, from my perspective, with Rewind CBD, with the company that I've built, we at first relied a lot on on marketing and influencers and all that, and we realized that we're not making any money. We're not making a lot of money off influencers that don't align with our product. So I'd rather go into a more organic way, and maybe not even have to try to look for ways that it's organic and you don't have to spend money. So what I did is I said, okay, you know what? Rewind CBD helped me. It's THC free, and I know that if I can use it, then all of my boys that are still playing in the MLS or other leagues can use it and feel better. So I would send it to them. They would love the product. I wouldn't even have to tell them anything. They could do whatever they needed with it. But if it works for them, most likely an athlete, if something that really works for them, they'll put it on for free. They'll post about it just because maybe they want to attract a more solid connection with that brand. And that's how it happens in a more sincere way, which, for example, that's for me personally what I look for in building with brands. Just the way that I will rep your brand if I really like it, and if I and if I really use it, and if it means something to me. If not, it's phony. So I'm not going. There's a balance between the check and the product. So you just have to be cautious about who you're investing your money into, and what money you're also taking in, like who you're taking it in from. So you gotta be balanced in both ways.
Yeah, I think, to your point, Chloe, I think there's definitely some times where that's segregated, where you're looking at just talent versus influence. I think that there are a lot of opportunities, and part of that's through the process that we do at Open Sponsorship, of finding talent that can influence in your space. To Rodney's point, if I am not aligned with your product, if I don't believe in your cause, if I don't believe in what you're trying to promote, and put out there into whatever audience you're targeting, ultimately I'm not the right fit. And I think fit is so critical right now in terms of when you're selecting athletes. I think similarly to when you think about a professional athlete, right? Most of our life is been around a hyper focus on being, the best of the best in a sport that we love. That takes a lot of like discipline and effort and consistency day over day. And so when we feel passionate naturally about a product, or we feel passionate about a cause, I think you're going to get the best, dime on your buck if you are finding athletes that ultimately, to Rodney's point, are very much aligned with whatever it is that you're selling. To the point we showed before, great. It's, there's a difference between getting high levels of visibility, but is that converting to sales? And so for Cristiano, I'm sure there's a lot of people that saw that KFC ad. Does that mean that KFC is now selling their chicken? I'm unsure, because ultimately it doesn't, for me, it's something that catches my eye because I'm a fan of Cristiano and he has great marketability, but it doesn't feel authentic to me enough where I could honestly believe a man of his performance level and the way in which he promotes his life via social is actually going home at night and eating KFC. So I think it's just really more so about finding talent that is influential with your product. That's kind of the approach I would take there. And to Rodney's point, there's ways to be cost effective with that, because ultimately, if you find someone that makes sense, you should be paid back twofold, right? Because it should feel very authentic, and you should be converting on sales because it feels very authentic to your brand.
And you'll continue to work with that person, and then both of you are going to make
yeah, and I think that's a good point.
Revenue.
You want to create long-term. You want to create long-term partnerships with your influencers. I think that's really important.
And for athletes, it's important to be very smart about how they approach, what their approach and their interactions with brands, just because you always want to be, you're representing yourself. So you always want to be respectful, and you always want to complete your tasks, which I would say like it's not like word travels, but brands understand, okay, well, we can't count on that person because they can't even post the what's in the contract. Yeah. So you know what I mean? And people people know each other and brands know each other, and then it's like, oh, I was working with him, you know what I mean? Oh, it was cool. Like, so you have to be very smart about relationships. And that's something I learned from the game. A coach of mine told me, you always have to make sure you are yourself to every single person, despite of what you're going through. For me, it was like, I always say good morning to all of my teammates, to all the staff. And then one time when he didn't start me, I was pissed off. So I didn't even say good morning to him. And he was like, you can't do that. You can't really switch who you are just because you're feeling a certain way. He's like, you can't be an a-hole to people and then expect them to come back and do things for you. So he's like,
Yeah.
whenever you're in a situation, make sure you are yourself the nicest person, like respectful, because at the end of your career, you're gonna come back and maybe you might need a favor. You want to knock on a door, or work with a brand. You want them to say, yeah, I remember how you made me feel. And instead of being like, no, I'm definitely not working with you. You were an a-hole to me when I wasn't working with this company. I'm definitely not going to help you now.
Yeah. Well, we have a follow-up, Rodney. Haley said, Rodney, that's the approach our company would like to take, offering solutions on the front end, likely with a gift partnership initially, but building long-term relationships by offering solutions on the front end. Is there a way to stand out or stand apart on the gift approach for influencers or talent who are being inundated with offers that might have a higher price sticker attached to them? You get the question?
Let me go back to it. Let me get through it. Break it down for me, Tina.
So I think the question here is really, okay, if let's say I'm a smaller brand company that's trying to take the initial approach to what you spoke about. I feel very good about my product. I feel like it's going to stand well in the marketplace. I know it's of quality, but the approach I want to initially take is kind of a value in kind opportunity where I'm sending these gift opportunity, these packages to athletes to kind of just test the product, get a feel, maybe get feedback as part of that. But it sounds as though Kaylee's seeing that in the market, it's very competitive. How do you kind of stand out if there's others in the market that are willing to just throw money at somebody just to give them the product versus her approach of trying to first just deliver first via product and then potentially look to compensate the athlete as a secondary, to see how it goes and then secondary approach with that. I can say for myself, I can answer first while you think about it. But I think for me, when I think about it, the question, again, this goes back to the authenticity around which athlete you're working with. The whole idea is that if an athlete is just taking your product because you're paying them, they're not passionate about it. It can be both, right? They can be passionate. Like, it's great to add the money in to incentivize them, but I think it's always good to align yourself with someone who actually, do they use the product? Do they eat the product? Do they drink the product? It has to feel authentic and aligned with whatever brand that they're, also promoting via their social platforms or how they're known in the marketplace outside of just being an athlete. And so I think it's, if you feel like your product is strong, I think the gift approach can be successful. It's just about making sure you're delivering it to the right athlete that feels aligned. Because ultimately, if the athlete feels aligned, I think that they would be more eager to engage with you, one, and also look for a longer term partnership because sometimes, I don't know about you, Rodney, when I was an athlete, there was many things that I paid to use that if they had just said to me, like, we will just send you this stuff for free, that would have been enough for me because I was drinking those things every day and paying for it, or I was using the supplement every day and paying for it. So I think there's opportunity there.
You're going to post them and you want the company to do well, right? Because it's so good. You're like, you know what? Like, yo, this is it. You don't even have to post a link. Then people will start to catch on. And then now the company's like, hey, thanks for posting that. Like, would you like product? And then okay, sure. Like, I would love that. It's not about the money right now. It might be later or what, who knows? But let's start working with each other to see where it can go. It's not necessarily about the big bag right away for the company or the athlete. You have to find that balance. And I think the gift approach is fantastic because you also don't want to give away everything you have to somebody that doesn't, when I say doesn't deserve it, it's somebody that isn't meant for what you're selling. You gotta be so smart about your audience. So now you have the product, then you have the audience, and then you have what influencers, what players, what World Cup athletes are going to align with this product. And I'm gonna say, okay, he went to the World Cup, so why not ask him if he wants to try out this product, and if it fits, then he'll want to work with us. I might ask, hey, what's your budget for this? Is there a certain I may ask the question, is there a monetary incentive in this? And they might say, at this time we're not able to do that, but we can give you the product. And then you know what, that works out. And they're gonna say, we don't have the money for that right now, but we can give you the product, and then we can talk about a long-term relationship, which is great. When brands say that, it's good, because just take it and see how you feel about it. And then that's when you start to think, okay, this is how I can get involved with this brand. That might work with them. So then you start to have a list of brands that you can connect with each other. You can maybe align them with a certain other product, or you have an idea that you can pitch to them. And that's how you start to become not just the athlete or the ex-athlete. Now you're
And I think it feels more
now you're in
meaningful for me.
business. Yeah, now
Yeah.
you're playing. Now you're in a whole different ball game, away from the game, but deservingly so. The game gave you the ability to be able to leverage these things.
Yeah. And I think I always say this too, and you know this, Rodney, as being a former player, but also being in a lot of these athletes are so much more dynamic than just their sport and their ability on a field or a pitch. So ultimately, that's, I think, also what makes open sponsorship unique. I have to do a little plug, is because we have opportunity where you can throw open a campaign that's structured around a product trade. And ultimately, the athletes that are applying to that are those that are, you can weed out pretty quickly those that are passionate about what you're doing and those that are not. So ultimately, it's an easier process in terms of right off the bat, you're set up to be successful, because the people that are vying for the position of being part of your campaign or being part of your greater marketing strategy and team are athletes that feel like they very deeply align with whatever it is that you're doing. And to your point, Rodney, I think like the most lasting influencer campaigns are those that, are long-term partnerships with a specific athlete. Ultimately, because it's one thing to see the product once on an Instagram page. It's another thing if I'm an avid follower of yours and I see that you're continually using the product and engaging with it and promoting it. It feels a bit more authentic to the audience. But yeah, this has been, I think me and you, Rodney, could talk about this all day. It's an exciting space. We're both very passionate about soccer. I left both of our emails there. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're happy to help from all fronts here at Open Sponsorship. I know Rodney is Open Door as well. And yeah, just thank you, Rodney, for kind of bringing your wisdom to today's, webinar. And thank you everyone else for joining us.
And put on the link to what we were just talking about, the soccer house, so people can take a look at what I guess it's like a live example of what we were talking about. So just it's just for you all to get a feel for how we operate and how things work. But thank you all for joining in, and Tina, thank you for leading this, and Open Sponsorship as well for the
And I have to ask Rodney before we go, who's the predictor? Who's your World Cup winner?
Costa Rica.
Of course.
But like not of course, like not don't like not of course. It's like, you know what? I'm not holding why would I not root for them to go to the World Cup? I would be happily rooting for them.
Yeah, that's fair. I want to say the US. The pride of me says the US, of course, but the analytical side of me, I'm going to go with England. I think England has a good shot.
England.
I do. I think England has a good shot. They're making a comeback for the Euros. They're making a comeback for the Euros. They're on a high.
It's going. The cup is coming. It's coming home. Is that what you guys say? But why England?
I'm sure they would hope for that. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining. And hopefully look forward to chatting to some of you soon.
Appreciate y'all. Bye.